Good evening, everyone. My name is Mariam Mani. I am the Senior Climate Change Officer at Dubai Carbon Center of Excellence, and I'm here today to brief you about Dubai Carbon, our mission, our vision, and the work that we have done so far, in addition to the work that we plan to do in the future to combat climate change and mitigate and adapt to it as well. Before I start with Dubai Carbon, I'd like to give you a brief introduction of myself. I have graduated from the American University of Sharjah back in 2013, and ever since then, time has been flying. I joined Dubai Carbon immediately after my graduation, and I have started actually as an intern there, climbing all the way up to being the Senior Climate Change Officer. During my tenure in Dubai Carbon, I have worked on several initiatives that which Dubai Carbon is framed upon and shaped around. And some of them are, for instance, research and knowledge products and publications, and also in the technical field in promoting strategies and policies and implementation plans to reduce carbon emissions and formulate strategies for both public and private organizations. My work with sustainability started a long time before joining Dubai Carbon. I was doing research with University of Cambridge and the American University of Sharjah on reducing water footprint, specifically in the agricultural sector. Most of our publications are published by both universities and are available online for the readers to further explore. We started from very small technical details, climbing all the way up to setting efficient irrigation strategies and trying to adopt the water balance approach in order for us to reduce water consumption and increase greenery here in the UAE. And my colleague Shahda is here, and she would like to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, we're really happy to be here today and to tell you more about who we are and what we do at Dubai Carbon. But we'll first start by introducing myself as well. My name is Shahda Al-Ta'i, and my background is in mechanical engineering. But then again, my senior year, I specialized more into climate change and renewable energy, and this is the kind of field that I chose to be in. With Dubai Carbon, I'm a technical officer, and we do a lot of, as my colleague Mariam mentioned, we do a lot of strategies for green economy and climate change and emission reduction strategies as well. My area of expertise is mostly related to greenhouse gas emissions and accounting and reporting for different levels of reporting, which I will walk you through in more details in the second half of the session. And I'll give you examples of some of the work that we've done, also with Rashma, who was also on stage from Ministry of Energy, and the kind of collaborations that we've worked on together, basically for the future of climate change mitigation in UAE and in the world as well. I'll let Mariam talk you through who we are and what we do, and tell you a bit about climate change as well. So.
Thank you, Shahda. In the context of who we are, how was Dubai Carbon formed, basically, is through an agreement with the Dubai Supreme Council of Energy and the United Nations Development Programme. This agreement was formulated based on the government's requirements and addressing the needs to promote energy efficient projects, renewable energy projects, and reduce the carbon emissions here in Dubai and hopefully expand across the UAE and even the GCC. So based on these needs, the Dubai Carbon was formed almost 6 years ago. Our sixth birthday is next January. And yes, ever since then, we've been working under the vision and the mission of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum in order to achieve low carbon emissions and promote green practices and sustainable development. Our approach is geared towards ensuring that the public and private partnerships are enabled and that we work together to bring the public and private partnerships into reducing the carbon emissions. Most of our work is revolving around, in the technical part, is about carbon abatement and resource efficiency strategies, research and knowledge development, multi-stakeholder think tanks, manufacturing of carbon credits, and green project management. When we talk about research and development and knowledge sharing, it is not just what Dubai Carbon does, but it's also what the UAE is doing in terms of energy efficiency. So we try to ensure that we are the knowledge hub and that we showcase all the work that has been done in the UAE through annual publications that are administered by Dubai Carbon but published and reviewed by the Ministry of Energy in the United Nations Development Program. Other publications such as the Green Economy Report, the State of Green Economy Report is widely focused on Dubai but talks about all the green economy initiatives that are done in order to reduce carbon emissions and achieve low emissions in the Emirate. Speaking about our work, I can give you a few examples. For instance, with Dubai Police, we had one major project which was called the Zero Carbon Initiative. It's basically moving Dubai Police to be one of the most efficient police forces in the world through reducing their emissions and creating their implementation plans, creating their KPIs, and ensuring that they are sustaining their practices towards becoming a zero carbon police force. Another major project we've worked on and we've just finalized and launched was the RTA Green Economy Framework. And the RTA is the Roads and Transport Authority, and basically they wanted to shift all of their practices and ensure that every single practice within the authority is considering green elements in its processes. And based on that, the green economy concept was integrated into the RTA practices and emissions. Other works will be discussed further by my colleague Shahta. So we all know what climate change is, and we understand why Dubai Carbon is now formed to adapt and mitigate to climate change. I will skip through the slides that talks about climate change and present you with the most important parts that relates to our work. Basically, these are the gases that causes global warming, and these are the gases that we use in our calculations and in our models to calculate the carbon emissions of organizations and also of the country level or community level. And based on these gases, considering that CO2 is the biggest denominator here, we try to convert all of these gases into a common denominator, which is the carbon emissions, and calculate so in order for us to be able to compare apples to apples, in order for us to be able to see how much carbon emissions we have from consuming electricity as opposed to consuming water. Sources of emissions, as we all know, could be the lights that we use, the air conditioning systems, which fall under the category of electricity consumption. We have water use, whether it is in irrigation or it is in utilities. We have also business travels. We have fuel consumption in terms of generator usage or vehicles, and other internal operations and industrial operations. This is an interesting fact here that we have, which is basically the carbon emissions, and it is published by the International Panel for Climate Change, and it talks about the sources of greenhouse gases and their contribution to the greenhouse gases. And if you can see here that transport and electricity and heat and all of the other sources are contributing majorly, with transport being 14% and the industry is at 21%. And then we talk about, we look into what are the global, the highest global emitters, and if you can see that less than 10 countries make more than 50 or 60% of the total emissions of the world, with China being at the highest. And this graph is sometimes confusing for our readers. It's a cumulative graph showing that China has almost 19% of the contribution of the carbon emissions in the world. And the United States would be at 36 minus 19, which is around, my math is killing me today, which is around, I don't know, 21%. And then going forward to the other countries, as we can see. We know that the UAE is at high emissions, and we know that the UAE has one of the highest footprints, but we don't see it in that graph because the geographical size and the size of the UAE and the population compared to the international countries such as China and the States is very small. Here are some of the effects and the projected water scarcity across the across the world, with physical water scarcity being the worst. And we see that in regions such as the UAE and North Africa. And these are just a few of the the effects that we may have based on climate change effects. I will try to skip as much as I can so I can get to the interesting part, which Shahda will talk about the UAE initiatives and how Dubai Carbon is contributing to those.
Basically, I'll just give you guys a quick updates about what's happening and what will happen soon. You might all be aware of some of the international efforts to combat climate change, and of course, the IPCC is one of the scientific bodies that are working towards it, and they have been working for a very long time. And also, there's the UNFCCC, and I'm sure that a lot of speakers today were talking about that, and also Reshma brushed upon the COP that recently that happened last year in Paris, and then there's COP22, which is happening in Marrakesh this year as well. So basically, this is just giving you a roadmap of what has been happening and all the international efforts to basically combat and mitigate climate change. And these are some examples of things happening around the world and in UAE especially. CDM projects, Clean Development Mechanisms. Basically, they're projects where some of the biggest emitters in the world who have some targets, they have committed to some targets to reduce their emissions, they come and they invest their technology, their knowledge, and the know-how, basically, in countries like UAE by developing projects which help to reduce emissions and basically take these carbon credits which are generated by the emission reductions of the projects, and this will help the emitting countries to reduce their emissions and meet their targets, basically. So this is something that we can benefit from here in UAE, and we can basically encourage more projects, more CDM projects to happen. Currently, we have around 15 projects in UAE, but it would definitely be interesting to get more knowledge and invest more in UAE projects, which will help us with better technologies and help the other countries who are investing as well. This is just basically touching upon the UAE's efforts in climate change mitigation and what they have been involved in. Basically, their national communications, sending it through, and with their emissions, and basically just